Hi, welcome. This is my first long form video. Up till now, I've only been doing shorts, so I'm gonna give this a try. So be kind, because I've never edited a video of this nature before, so I'm gonna give it a go. Let's talk about the books I read in July. So the first book I read was Out of Aztlan by V. Castro. It is a collection of short stories, most of them set in Mexico and Central America. Incredibly good, very, very good. All quite dark, which is good. I read horror mostly. That's kind of what I'm drawn to. I didn't realize that this book was that. I just bought it, honestly, because I liked the cover, and it came with a pretty matching bookmark. And I really just bought it because I liked the cover and the bookmark, and the spine is a spine, so that's kind of nice. Let's move on to the next one. War of the Worlds. This one was my favorite book of the month. I bought this book when I was in elementary school, when the movie came out, because I saw the movie and I was like, oh, that movie's so cool, I didn't know there was a book. And so I bought it at the Scholastic Book Fair, and I tried to read it then. I was probably 7 or 8, and I was like, ugh, this sucks. But really, I just was too little and couldn't really appreciate it. But I read it recently, and it's great. It was amazing. It's probably my favorite book that I've read this year. I'm always so impressed, and I've read other older sci-fi books that impress me in a similar way. I'm always so impressed with like how well they predicted this technology when they were even further from it than we are today. Like, I don't know how H.G. Wells imagined these sorts of monstrosities the way he did, but it's really, really cool and really imaginative. And then this is the most recent book that I read, The Lightning Thief. Books that I always intended to read as a kid, but for some reason just never got around to. One of my friends was selling off all her childhood books because she was moving like a year or two ago, and I bought these from her, the whole series, and I finally got around to reading them, or to reading this one at least, and it is so good. I've read a lot of middle grade recently, and I've got kind of a special place in my heart for middle grade because they're nice, easy reads. They're not too complicated. They're pretty straightforward stories. They're entertaining because they're written for kids. They've kind of got to hold their attention. So it's a nice break from reading some more difficult or complex stories. And I just really enjoy reading these. And then I read this, Sweet Thursday by John Steinbeck. A sequel kind of to Cannery Row by John Steinbeck, which I didn't even realize when I started reading it, but I had already read Cannery Row, so it worked out that I was reading the sequel. I didn't realize until the first chapter. I was like, oh, this has the same characters and is in the same setting as Cannery Row. That's convenient, because that was actually the last John Steinbeck book that I read. Amazing book, really, really beautifully written. I haven't read a lot of Steinbeck, but I've enjoyed the things that I have read. This book in particular has some beautiful prose that I didn't think John Steinbeck was capable of, or at least that I hadn't seen before in his writing. And I truly enjoyed it. Especially, I made a short about chapter 35 in particular. He does this beautiful soliloquy. The character Doc has this beautiful soliloquy in chapter 35 that just like is heart-wrenching. He's just like pouring his heart out to this girl that he's fallen in love with, and he's not the type of person to express his love, and it's really sweet and really beautiful the way that he chooses to express his love for this girl, and it's awesome. Then I read a couple plays. I'll save those for last. I'll save the plays for last. This book, my brother got me 2019 Christmas, so I've had it for a while, and I actually started reading it in 2020, and I've been slowly reading it like little by little since then. The first 2/3 of the book are primarily, it's nonfiction. The first 2/3 of the book are primarily just the author, who is a journalist, kind of describing the events of these soccer fans, football fans. It's set in England, and kind of how intense they are and all of the riots. And throughout the book, it sort of escalates. I didn't really enjoy the first 2/3 of the book. The last third of the book I thought was great, and I'm glad that I forced myself to finish it. I really only did because my brother got it for me as a gift, and I would have felt guilty if I hadn't. But the last third of the book was phenomenal. He gets a little bit more into like the philosophy of it and the psychology of crowds, and it does ramp up to be quite violent and quite disturbing, which is also something I generally look for in books that I read. So it was very, very good and very well written and well described. Then I read this book, Woman Eating by Claire Kohda. As a buddy read with one of my friends, we went to Barnes & Noble and picked it out sort of randomly. She was like, we should read a book together. And so we went with that in mind, but nothing else, to Barnes & Noble, and this is the one that stood out to us. So we decided to read it. She tore through it. It took me about a week longer than her to read it. Incredible book. Incredible book. It's about a vampire. I'm not spoiling anything by saying that. It's pretty apparent from early on. It's about a woman who's a vampire, trying to sort of resist her vampire side and trying to be more human and live with humans. And it's I thought it was a horror book going into it. It's not at all. It's just sort of a look into the life of like, what would it be like? Like, what would dating be like? What would friendships look like for someone that is in this situation that can't eat regular food and like has to subsist on blood but doesn't want to kill people? And it's very, very interesting. It reminded me a little bit of and this is going to be a major cliche, it reminded me a little bit of how Twilight has the vegetarian vampires. The character in this was sort of a vegetarian vampire, and but it dove deeper into some of the struggles and stuff that she had to go through in order to not kill humans, and it was really, really great. And then this book, Mexican Gothic, I've had for a little while, almost a year actually. I borrowed it from a friend, and I'm glad I can give it back to her now. Phenomenal book. It was. It came out, I want to say 2021. It's fairly new, by Silvia Moreno-Garcia. Incredible book. Really, really disgusting. Both in I don't know if. Probably not body horror. That's probably not the best way. I don't want to say it because it'll spoil it, but it's very gross. There's a lot of gross things that happen in this book that are sort of nauseating, but also beautiful. The prose is beautifully written. The situations are described in a way that are really, it sort of makes you feel ick too, because the descriptions are so gross, but they're described so beautifully that like you don't know how to feel, and so that adds an extra layer of like emotional confusion and torment to the book that makes it really effective and really good and that much more disturbing. So now let's get to the plays. I read 2 plays, not a whole lot, but both borrowed from a friend. So this one, The Last Days of Judas Iscariot, didn't love it. I don't have much to say about it. The very end, I will say, I tend to like the end of things. I don't know why. It was kind of a slog to get through until the end, the final scene between Judas and Jesus. And this is a semi-fictional Judas and Jesus character. They're not super realistic based on the Bible, but they're characters in a play. Super good though. The final scene in particular, super good between those two. And worth reading literally just for that. There's also a monologue. I don't remember the character's name. Butch Honeywell, who is a made-up character in this universe of this play. Butch Honeywell has like a 3-page monologue at the end of the book. Also phenomenal. Very, very good. So the final scene between Judas and Jesus and the Butch Honeywell monologue, I think are worth the read. The beginning of the book was whatever. Or play. The beginning of the play was whatever. And then the final thing that I read this month was Laughter on the 23rd Floor by Neil Simon. Not much to say about this. It was a typical Neil Simon play, like the other ones that I've read and seen. Super funny, super slapstick, super goofy. Didn't age very well. There were some jokes about race and some things like that I don't know. They wouldn't fly today. I think if this play was put on today, many theaters would choose to modify the script for those reasons, but maybe not. Who knows? I've not seen a production of this nor heard of a production of this being put on, but it was quite funny. It was good. not one of my favorites, but it was fine. And that is it. Those are the books that I read in July. My favorite was War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells, and I'll see you next time.